Hi guys, welcome to the very first lesson of our online music classroom. So today we're going to be talking about vocal timbres and just timbre in general because it's a very important word that we use in music. So we're going to start with our essential questions. So our first essential question is, how can we use vocal timbres in the appropriate way? When is it appropriate to use a shouting voice? And when is it appropriate to use a singing voice? So let's get started. So let's talk about timbre first. Timbre is the way an instrument or voice or something sounds. Another word for timbre, tone. So let's talk about the way that different timbres are created on instruments first. So one consideration for timbre is how the sound is made on the instruments. So let me give you a few examples. A violin, the sound is made by creating vibrations on the strings. So that timbre is going to be a little different than, say, a clarinet, which needs wind and a reed, which is a piece of wood that vibrates to create the sound. And both of those timbres are going to be different from, say, a djembe, which is a type of African drum, which needs a head to be hit or smacked or struck to make the sound. So that timbre is going to be very different compared to the string instrument and the wind instrument. But timbre can be tricky because the same instrument can also make different timbres based on the way that you play them. So let me give you an example. So this is a dulcimer, right? It's a string instrument. It has 4 strings on it that make the sound. That's how we create the sound. And based on the way that I play the strings will change the timbre of the sound. So if I just strum it, it makes that sound. But if I reach out and pluck one of the strings, all of a sudden the timbre changes. Let's do an experiment. So now, of course, warn your parents before you do this because this is going to be a little bit loud. But what I did was I went into my kitchen and I grabbed a pan, just a regular saucepan, okay? And anything can make a timbre depending on how you hit it or what you do to it. So what I did was I grabbed 3 different things and I'm going to hit the pan with all 3 of those things and see how many different sounds or timbres that I can create with different things that are made out of different materials and have different sizes and shapes. So let's start first with a ladle. Okay, ladles are used for soup. This is made out of metal, obviously. Okay, so let's hear what it sounds like when I hit the pan with the ladle. So now, instead of a metal ladle, I'm going to use a plastic spoon and see what kind of timbres I can create. Now, I can probably create a lot of different timbres based on how I use the spoon. So let's use the flat side first and see what kind of sound that makes. Okay, now let's use the end of my spoon. Okay, what about the side? Okay. Now, let's use something completely different. How about a pen? Let's see what the end of this pen sounds like when I hit it with the hit it on the pot. Oh, changed timbres, didn't it? So I went from the middle of the pan to the bottom of the pan where it curves. So depending on where you hit the pot as well, it can change the timbre. So timbre can be different on the same instrument depending on how you hit it. A good example is a xylophone. A xylophone can have a different timbre depending on what the bars are made out of, whether it's wood or metal, or what you hit it with. That's why we have so many different types of mallets. We have plastic mallets, we have wooden mallets, we have yarn-covered mallets. There's just a plethora of different types of mallets because we don't want the same timbre for every single song. And composers and musicians have tried different things and done different things to try to get those different timbres. Alright, so let's now talk about vocal timbres. So timbre is the tone, and vocal means voice. So there's the difference. So we've been talking a lot about instruments and how to make how their timbres are made, but now let's talk about vocal timbres because it's a little bit more complicated. So today we're going to talk about 4 different vocal timbres: whispering, speaking, shouting, and singing. Now, there are a lot of different vocal timbres, but those are the main four that we as students need to learn to know when it is appropriate to use which vocal timbre, because those are the most common that we use in school. So let's start with the first one, whispering. So whispering is when we want to do something like share a secret, or maybe we're working independently in class with a lot of people talking at the same time. We want to make sure that we're whispering in that. So here's what a whisper sounds like. This is what a whisper sounds like. If you're whispering, then someone even a foot or two away shouldn't hear you whispering with someone. It's something that you want to use to either keep other people from hearing it or to be respectful to those around you. So another way that we can use whispering is in a restaurant. If one table of people are using a speaking voice, or even for whatever reason a shouting voice, then that's going to bother other people around them, and we don't want to bother other people when we're eating. Also, if you're at a concert, the best thing to be is silent. But if you have an emergency and you have to speak to somebody during a concert, then you should use a whisper timbre. That way you're not bothering other people. Then we have our speaking voice. So anytime that you're talking to one or two people and you're not in a place that you need to be quiet, then you can use your speaking voice, which is the normal speaking voice that I'm using right now. It's a little softer than what I would use if the whole class was in front of me and I was trying to speak to every person, including the person in the back. But it's something that you would use when you're having a conversation or when you're talking to your teacher. Or let's give another example. Has your parents ever called you from another room and you accidentally used a shouting voice and then got in trouble? Speaking voices, nice, even tones, should be used when answering someone, because otherwise they think you are trying to be rude to them. Third, our shouting voice. So anytime we have a shouting voice, we're going to be either outside or in a venue, meaning a place that it's appropriate to shout in. So a couple of things. Maybe you're at a football game and your team scores a goal. That is the perfect place for you to shout and cheer. Maybe you're playing outside on a playground. Yelling and shouting is totally fine on the playground. And maybe you're calling to someone at a far distance. That's also a really great time to use your shouting voice, as long as it's not inside or it's going to bother other people. Last but certainly not least, my favorite vocal timbre, singing. Singing is when you use your vocal folds, which are in your neck, and you pass air through them to have them vibrate to create pitches or musical notes that create a song or a piece of music. Singing is what we do when we trust somebody. If we're singing for somebody, we trust them and we want to give them that gift of song. So when is it appropriate to sing, though? Because it's a little tricky. I love singing all the time, but if I were to sing in the middle of a meeting when no one asked me to, then people are probably going to be a little annoyed and they're probably going to think I'm a little rude. So in music class, of course, singing is always acceptable as long as we're singing together. When we're practicing for a program or a rehearsal, or we're in a rehearsal, totally appropriate. Singing in my favorite place in the entire world, the shower. Totally okay, though it does kind of bother my husband sometimes. That doesn't stop me though, and it shouldn't stop you either. So with that being said, we can also sing outside and during recess or when we're playing. Those are totally okay places to sing. Everyone's voice is different too. That's the best part about singing, is that it's not an instrument. Though instruments can have different timbres depending on which musician is playing them, voices have a wide range of timbres, and we're going to explore them right now with one of my favorite genres, opera. Opera is very vocal and it's very dramatic. It's like a play and a musical put together, but with classical singing styles. So let's start with our first female vocal timbre, which is soprano. This woman's name is Dana Schneitzer, and she's singing a piece from Mozart's opera Così fan tutte.
Sortite fuori di questo luogo e nel profane l'alito infosto degli infami detti, nostro cor, nostre orecchie e nostri affetti. E non per voi, per gli altri in van si cerca le nostre
right, so the second clip that I have for you is from Handel's Simile, which is an operatic drama. And it is Iris Hence Away, sung by mezzo-soprano Emily Marvosh.
Hence, hence, Iris hence away. Iris hence away, 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 far from the realms of day, far from the realms of day, far from the realms, far from the realms of day.
So now let's move on to male singing voices. So the first one we're going to hear is an excerpt from The Pirates of Penzance. If your parents may know this one's really popular. It's very funny, and it's actually in English. And so the tenor singer his name is Brennan Buckley.
I am the very model of a modern making general. I'm English and vegetable and a mineral. I know the king's.
The last excerpt is by baritone bass Leon Lischner, and he's going to sing La Complainte du Partisan. It's a song from France.
Les amants étaient chez moi, on m'a dit resigne-toi, mais je n'y pas pu. Et j'ai repris mon arme. Personne ne m'a demandé d'où je viens et où je vais, vous qui le savez.
So let's review. Timbre, or tone, is the way an instrument, voice, or something sounds when you play it or sing it. We also have many different vocal timbres: whispering, speaking, shouting, and singing. Those are our 4 vocal timbres, and we practiced them today. All of the excerpts that you saw, those were just tiny little pieces of them. I'm going to add them to the assignment at the bottom if you'd like to listen to any of them in their full glory. But until then, I will see you for the world music lesson that I'll be posting at, right about at the same time. So I'll see you then. Bye!